The best way to get better at filmmaking is just to make films. And on top of that, is to not worry about the result, meaning that you don't get caught up on whether or not the film you create is good. You should totally let all of that go and forget about how good your film is gonna be. And I know that sounds terrifying, right? Because you wanna make the best possible film you can. And if I'm just telling you, don't worry about it, it's like, what's the point? Well, I'm here to tell you that there is a point and you should do it anyway. Now, your film may suck. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe you're a genius. But that's okay. The issue with wanting perfection is that you'll get stuck on little details and you won't actually get anything done, and therefore you won't learn anything. I want you to be unafraid to make the biggest mistakes in your film possible, because that's the only way you're going to learn. Now, while I'm telling you to not worry about how good your film ends up, I know that you still want to make the best possible film you can. That's why in this video, I'm going to teach you how to make your very first short film. By the way, in case you're new here, my name is Nicholas James DaGosta, the founder of August Sun Productions. I'm a filmmaker and actor, and I've made quite a few short films over the years, 3 of which won awards at film festivals. So I feel I'm uniquely qualified to teach beginners how to make a film on an extremely low budget, considering all my films were made on micro budgets. So without further ado, please grab a pen and take notes and watch to the end as I break down the simple steps you need to take to make your very first short film. So obviously, the first step in making any film is to write the story. But when you're writing the story, I want you to write with the mindset that this is something you're going to film as soon as possible. So don't write anything too complicated. No fistfights, no car chases, no shootouts, nothing like that. Just simple, short, 2 characters, 3 max, 10 pages in the script at most, and 1 location, only 1. And as a pro tip, I would suggest writing around a location that you know you can secure. So if your friend owns a pizzeria, let's say, and you know that he would let you film at his pizzeria, you should write a story around a pizzeria. And again, the general rule of thumb here is if you can't film it, don't write it. Because the goal of this first film is just build up your skill set as a filmmaker, right? You don't want to be thinking about, how am I going to do this? No, it's something you could definitely do now, something that's so easy. And then you want to keep on making films like this that feel so easy, and to the point where your skills just develop, and before you know it, you're taking on really tough film projects. But that doesn't happen overnight. That happens through doing simple projects and then building yourself up. So in summary, keep it short and sweet, very few characters, 1 location. Boom. Okay, so now that you've come up with your idea and you've written your script, you're gonna wanna start planning your film. And I think the most important thing to start with is to set a definitive date you're going to film. And here's why. Because I have done this so many times where I have not set a date, and I've gathered a whole cast and crew together, and then when it comes time to actually schedule something, I have to coordinate with everyone's schedules, and it's a mess. It's crazy. So please learn from my pain and set a date before you get anyone else involved. It'll save you a ton of headaches, believe me. So now that you have a day of when you'll be shooting, now you can finally assemble a crew together. So who do you need in your crew? Well, you need 1 person to be the cinematographer / camera operator, and another person to be the sound recordist / boom operator. So 1 person for video, 1 person for sound. And if you enjoy working with cameras and you're a big camera guy, I guess you could only have 1 person in your crew, and you could be the cinematographer. So you could totally do that, but let's assume we're gonna go with 2 people in the crew, a camera operator / cinematographer and a sound recordist. Audio is way more important than video and filmmaking. And I know that's crazy to think about because film is a visual medium. It's moving pictures, right? So why would sound be more important? But we all know that if we tuned into a movie that sounded terrible but looked great, we would leave the theater immediately. Yet if we got into a theater where the sound was great, but the movie's picture was terrible, well, we will still watch it because we could hear what's going on. So definitely put more emphasis on the sound. And I also say this too because you'll find a lot less people willing to do sound than cinematography for some reason. I don't know why, but if you go to any filmmakers group, you'll find cinematographers, you'll find directors and writers, but like the sound people, where are they? I don't know where they're hiding. So definitely look for someone who's interested in sound, at least interested, because then they'll be incentivized to do better if it's something they actually care about. So now that you know who you need for your project, how do you find these people? Well, you could find a crew many different ways. I think the best 2 suggestions I have for you is 1, go to film festivals, see the films, meet people, literally anyone who wants to work for experience, just network with those people. And you'll probably find some people, probably a lot of people willing to help you with your project. And the same thing goes for meetup groups. If you look online for like filmmaker meetup groups, you could probably find one in your area. Or at least you could post some kind of notice on a Facebook group or something saying that you're looking for people to work on this project and, is anyone in my area? Simple as that. So of course, your crew needs equipment. And to get equipment, you could either see if anyone in your crew is willing to use their own equipment, such as the cinematographer using his own camera, or the sound recordist using his own audio recorder. But if you don't have that option, the best thing to do is, well, first of all, I wouldn't worry about the camera because you could honestly film on a phone and it could look decent. But that's not the case with audio. So I would really focus my effort on sound equipment if that's what is lacking. So just to use an example here, this is my sound recorder. It's called the Zoom H4n Pro, and it's really cool because, well, 1, it was not overly expensive, but 2, it has its own built-in microphones. So usually on a film set, you'll see a sound recorder that's plugged in with an XLR cable, and this XLR cable then it plugs into the shotgun mic, and the shotgun mic is held with a boom pole. But if you don't want to do all that, you could just literally hide this somewhere in your shot, this little recorder, and record through these microphones. That's it. You don't need a whole complicated setup. But if you want to shell out money for, if you want to get like an XLR cable and then get a boom pole and then a shotgun microphone, you could totally do that too. But just know that there are cheaper options and you could just use this guy. So the next thing you need is this guy. This is called the Slate. So this is used to sync the audio and video. And it basically works like this. You put in the scene number. So if you're filming the first scene, scene 1, and then take 1. And then during the second take, it's scene 1, take 2. Now, this process changes once you change the setup. So for example, if I'm acting in a movie and scene 1, take 1 is on me, right? And I'm talking to someone across the room, then they're going to switch that camera angle and film the person that I'm talking to. And that person will then be in scene 1A, take 1. Why? Because it is the first scene. We're doing the same exact scene, only it's from a different camera setup. So that makes it scene 1A. And then it's the first take. And then it goes on and on. Scene 1A, take 2, take 3, take 4. Just like that. So easy enough. And how it works is once you announce the scene you're doing, scene 1A, take 1, You hold this up, clap, and that clap is what's used to sync the audio and video and post-production. Now I'm going to talk more about that later on, but just for now, this is how you mark a slate. So of course, one of the big parts of filmmaking is lighting. You want those nicely lit shots for great cinematic effect. But it could be hard to do that if you're on a budget, especially if you're shooting indoors. That doesn't mean you shouldn't shoot indoors. It just means that you should understand a little bit about what makes a certain lighting setup look good and what doesn't. And you don't need crazy expensive lights to do this. You could probably get some really inexpensive LED lights online on Amazon or B&H Photo. Understanding how light works is probably more important than the light itself. So let's talk about two kinds of lighting you could use besides getting a film light. And that is practical lights and natural light. So natural light is light from the sun or light coming in through the window, right? These are things that are natural, everyday life. Practical lights are lights that you would find in your house, like a lamp, for instance. So there are a few rules of thumb here in how to light a subject. So let's start with natural lighting. So if you're filming outdoors, what you don't want to do is you don't want the actor to directly face the sun, because then you'll have a bunch of harsh shadows on his face. So what's a better thing to do if you're filming in the sunlight is to have the camera face the sun with the actor's back to the sun. Something else to take note of if you're doing an outdoor shoot is that the best time to film is golden hour. So golden hour is a little bit after sunrise and then an hour before sunset. And that's because the sun is lower in the horizon. So if the sun's higher, that's not as good as if the sun's lower. And that is, again, because of the harsh shadows. So filming at 12 o'clock noon would not be the ideal time to shoot. Sometimes you have to, and sometimes you can get away with it. If it's a cloudy day, it looks a little bit better because on a cloudy day, the sunlight's diffused. So you won't get those harsh shadows. So here are some concepts you need to know about lighting. So one is the key light, and I have a key light on me right now to my left. And the key light is essentially the brighter light on one side of the actor's face. And then there's the fill light. And the fill light, I don't have a fill light actually. I'm just pointing at a wall here. But the fill light would be the other light source on the other side of my face, which will be less bright. And depending on the mood you're going for, the key light will either be substantially brighter than the fill light or a little bit brighter. And what is called high key lighting is when the fill light and the key light are maybe almost equally as bright. The key light will still be a little bit brighter, but it'll be essentially like very close. And if you're going for low key lighting, that would be the mood of, let's say, a horror film or a dramatic film, then there may be a very low fill light to like no fill light and a key light right here. And that is how you get the contrast in the face. So as you can see now, I have some shadows on my face coming, and I have the key light shining on me. I have some shadows on my face. I have no light here. So this would be relatively low key lighting. It's not terribly dramatic because I have a lot of light bouncing off the walls and coming from the window. But if this were completely dark and I had some negative fill here, then this would be a very, very low-key lighting example. Another lighting concept that's really interesting is called motivated lighting. So an example of motivated lighting would be, pretend we have a lamp right here on this side of me. I have a lamp, and it has like an orange kind of tint to it, right? It's like an orangey kind of light. Now, you could have a lot of the light coming from the lamp. You'll get some light from it, but let's say it doesn't light your face enough, and you want more light coming from this side. You would set up a light with an orange color temperature, and you would set it up behind the lamp, let's say on this side of the room, all the way on this side, and you would shine it directly at your face. Now that light is not the lamp, right? you set this light up, but it looks as if the orange light that's illuminating is coming from the lamp because it's the same color temperature and it's coming from the same direction. So essentially it's tricking the audience to think that this practical light you're using is brighter than it actually is. Oh, and a pro tip, put the camera on the side of the actor's face that is darker. So in my case, I have a light pointing this way, and the camera is slightly angled towards the shadow side of my face. So these lighting concepts can apply to either practical lights, natural light, or lights you buy online. And I'll actually link all my equipment recommendations in the description down below. And last but not least, you'll want to find your actors. Now, how do you find actors? Well, there are a few ways to do this, two of which are the same way you find a crew members, which is one, you could go to a filmmaker meetup group where you'll probably find some actors there, or you can go to film festivals where you'll definitely find some actors. But you could also, if you have a local community theater nearby, you can go see a show there and then try talking to the actors after the show. So now that we're all done with the planning phase is done. Now we could finally think about the day of the shoot. So here's a basic overview of how the day of the shoot should look. So you and your crew should arrive about an hour before the actors do, so that you have an hour to set up and do all the technical things you need to do before the actors arrive. Once the actors do arrive an hour later, you want to just go over the order in which you're going to film and walk them through any blocking. Blocking is essentially what's known as stage directions, but essentially it's just what the actors are physically doing when they're saying their lines. So now that you've set up your equipment and that you've gone over everything with the crew and the actors, everyone knows what they're doing, everyone knows what order you're going to shoot in, now you could finally start filming. But that's where this guy comes back into the mix. So before I showed you how to mark the slate, but now this is where the actual clapping comes in. So basically what happens when you're ready to shoot, you, the director in this case, will say camera rolling. And that is the cue for the person operating the camera to then press record and say camera speed. And then you'll turn to the sound recordist and you'll say sound rolling. And the sound recordist will press record and then reply with sound speed. And then the person, probably you in this case, unless you have an extra person on set, will come up, mark the slate appropriately, and say, let's say it's scene 1, take 1. Scene 1, take 1. And then they'll do that, just like that. And then once you're ready for the actors to begin, you'll say action, and then the scene will start. That's it. Now, depending on your experience level, you may be wondering, what does a clap have to do with, merging sound and video? So as I mentioned before, you have a camera that records the video and an audio recorder that records the sound. Now, just so you know, the camera itself also records audio, but the reason you don't use the camera's audio is because it's just not as good as the audio recorder's audio. The camera audio is not the high quality sound you want. So you sync the separate audio file with your video to get better sound, and then you mute out the camera's audio. And how you merge them together is in post-production. And once you use this clapboard and you hit the sticks together, right, you can see on your editing software that you look at the audio waveform, and both the audio's sound and the sound from the camera will both have a spike in the audio. That spike is this sound. It's that loud clapping sound. And that spike you'll use as reference to then bring the footage from your camera and the sound recorder's audio together. And that's basically how it works. Oh, and by the way, you don't necessarily have to do this manually. For example, in Premiere Pro, you can actually just select both clips, and there's an option to merge the audio and video together without having to do it manually with the waveforms. So it's that easy. And that leads me to the last stage in the process, and that is post-production. You'll obviously need a computer and editing software. Now, I recommend Premiere Pro simply because that's what I use, but it is a paid subscription, so it may not be best for you. I believe DaVinci Resolve has a free version you could use, and if you have a Mac device, you could use iMovie for free. Now, while you could get someone else to edit the film for you, I really do suggest that you edit the film yourself. And that's simply because you learn so much about filmmaking just from editing. The whole structure of a film could be changed in the edit. So learning how to properly pace the film through editing is just such a valuable tool for a director or any kind of filmmaker, really. Even if you don't end up being an editor or you just hate doing editing, you're still going to learn a whole bunch just from doing that. So yeah, edit your film. So now we've finally reached the end of the video. What happens next is up to you. If you want to be a filmmaker, the best way to do it is to make films. And yeah, there are so many videos you could watch online that will really expand your knowledge, like this one. But really, nothing beats just doing the thing that you want to do. So I'll leave you with that. Well, thanks for joining me today. If you found this video useful and you're using it as a guide to help you make your first short film, please tell me how it's going down in the comments. And also, just feel free to leave any questions you may have for me. Oh, and also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Until next time.